Hi, I'm Chef Chris Koetke coming to you from my home in Chicago, and I'm very pleased to be with you today to cook with high oleic soybean oil. This is a very versatile oil that has application in the kitchen, from deep frying to a very light and airy cake, from the kitchen to the bake shop. So let's first take a look at this premium oil as a deep fry oil. High oleic soybean oil is a liquid oil, which means that it's easy to pour into a deep fryer as opposed to some of the solid or semi-solid fats. It also makes it a lot easier to filter. Now, we're going to see a bunch of other attributes of this great oil in the recipes that I'm about to do. So let's begin with one of the most popular deep fried items, French fries. Now, French fries have a very subtle flavor, and what's important about this oil is that it has a neutral flavor. If this oil is off or has strong flavors, it's going to make these French fries really taste terrible. In addition, this oil has a very high smoke point, which is a great thing for French fries. Drop them into the oil, 350 degrees or 175, and this is what most restaurants do so many times every day. Once the fries are golden brown, just like that, take them out. We're gonna let them drain. Now, this is really where the neutral flavor, the clean flavor of high oleic soybean oil really shows its stuff. Because now what do I have here? I have the flavor of French fries that have that great earthy flavor and nothing else. A little bit of salt or any other seasoning that you wish to put on the fries, and they're ready to eat. So now that we just got done with those delicious French fries, crunchy on the outside, soft and fluffy in the middle, we're gonna move to a battered product. So this is gonna be battered fish. And a battered product like fish, it has to have an oil that's very neutrally flavored. It'll pick up any off flavors from the oil. One of the advantages of the high oleic soybean oil is that it can stay at higher temperatures for long periods of time. It's a very stable oil. We're gonna see that repeated throughout this demonstration. Now, to make our battered fish, I have right here some cod, and it's been seasoned just with a little bit of salt and pepper first, and I'm just putting that into what's called a pre-dust. In this case, just very simply, some flour. Pat that right in. And what that's gonna do is allow for the batter to stick better and more evenly to the fish. So I drop it into the batter and then coat it very nicely. Now this gets a little bit messy, and we're gonna do what's called the swimming method here. Now the swimming method basically means I'm gonna take this once it's coated, come up here and drop it right into the oil. 350 Fahrenheit, or what would be 175 degrees Celsius. Our cod is done. When it's perfectly browned and crunchy on the outside, that's what makes fried fish so good. It's a little bit like those French fries, soft in the middle, crunchy on the outside. Now I let those drain just for a moment because you want to serve those super hot. I'm going to put them right here along with some of those French fries from earlier. And there's a great portion of fish and chips. I actually put some smoked paprika and black pepper on top of those fries because I like the flavor of it. Now, you know, there's a lot of restaurants that literally live or die. They stay in business or not because of the fried items they make. And that all has to do with the quality of the oil. Again, high oleic soybean oil is great for deep frying in those kind of restaurants where those fryers are working all the time. Speaking of restaurants that live or die by their deep fryers, you have to think right away of fried chicken and all the fried chicken restaurants, and most specifically, buffalo wings. Now, just a little sort of parentheses here. You know, buffalo wings were invented in Buffalo, New York, which is why they're called buffalo wings. But in any case, you'll notice also in a lot of those restaurants where those fryers are on and working all the time, you'll see a lot of buildup on the fryers. And one of the advantages of high oleic soy is that it doesn't have polymerization like the other oils. In other words, it resists that buildup. For restaurants, that's really important because that reduces on labor costs and it also reduces on the maintenance costs of the deep fryers. Again, we're all about saving money by using high quality oil. So let's make some buffalo wings. I'm going to begin with something that's a little bit unique that I'm making just for you today, and that's a special glaze to go on those buffalo wings at the end. And for that, I'm just going to take some butter. I'm going to add to that some honey. This is kind of a sweet and spicy glaze. I'm going to put a tiny bit of sesame oil. Again, sesame oil has such a strong flavor, you don't need much. A little bit of rice wine vinegar and a whole bunch of sriracha. That's where the spice comes in. What I'm going to do then is take this and put it on the stove, and I'm going to bring it up to a simmer and then just let it cook for a couple of minutes. We'll come back to that. So the next step is that I have to make my seasoned flour for the buffalo wings. And so what I'm going to do is take some flour and then put in a whole bunch of salt. I'm going to put in a little bit of onion powder, a fair amount of paprika, a tiny bit of celery seed, a little bit of poultry seasoning, which is really a kind of a sage and white pepper mixture, some nutmeg, and I'm going to put in some ground black pepper. Then I'm going to take that and just mix that together. Okay, so our seasoned flour is ready to go. The next thing we have to do is take a look at the actual chicken wings. So what we're going to do for this is to take the chicken wing, and basically I'm going to cut it at the joint right here, kind of get the upper part of the wing and then the middle section of the wing. The wing tip I'm not going to use. To prepare this, it's a little bit of a different technique. I'm going to have some milk right over here, and I have my seasoned flour. And this is the way it goes. I'm going to take chicken wings, put it into the seasoned flour. You'll notice I have a wet hand and a dry hand. This is the dry hand. Now watch this. I'm going to take these, put them into the milk, and this is kind of important. You want to get them in the milk, use your wet hand, do a quick mix, and get them right out and right back into the flour. So I'm almost double coating them with the seasoned flour. Give them a little shake because I don't want to have excess flour in the oil. And put them into my deep fryer basket. Drop it into that high oleic soybean oil. Again, the oil is at about 175 degrees, and we'll cook it just until it's nicely brown. One of the advantages of that double coating is that it makes buffalo wings that are so very, very crunchy. Now, once you've deep fried them, the next step to buffalo wings is that we need to put them into a bowl, and we're going to put some sauce on it. So what we're going to do, first of all, is I'm going to do the traditional one, which is a little bit of buffalo sauce right on top of those wings. Again, that's a super spicy sauce. Mix that up a little bit. And then once that's mixed up, all I would do is put that on a serving dish along with some celery sticks and some blue cheese or some ranch dressing. So that's kind of the traditional way of doing buffalo wings. Now, the way I'd like to show you today is with the other ones. Remember earlier we made that sauce, that sticky sauce with the honey and sriracha. What I'm going to do with that, that's cooked over here. I'm going to put in some toasted sesame seeds, and I'm going to put in some minced up green onions. Just mix that up. That smells so good. And I'm going to very simply pour that on top of the deep fried chicken wings. Stir those up like that, and then all I have to do is pour those onto a serving dish, and those are so absolutely delicious and crunchy. And once again, part of the reason that they taste so good is because of the high quality oil that they're cooked in. Breading is another technique where high oleic soybean oil really shines. Even with the abuse of high heat and little bits of breadcrumbs that fall off into the oil during the frying process, high oleic soybean oil is up to the task and lasts 2 to 3 times longer than common oils. And what does that mean for restaurants? Well, it means savings in terms of oil and the labor it takes to change out the fryer. So what are we going to make for a breaded item? How about tonkatsu? So to make it, I've already taken our pork loin right over here, and I like to brine it for about an hour in a mixture of sugar, salt, water, a little ginger, garlic, and then I just take a knife and I slice through the fat cap on top of the pork chop. Then I'm going to take this jacquarder that basically puts needles into the meat. That helps to tenderize it. And then I'm going to place this into plastic wrap, flip it over. I'm going to use sort of the pointed part of the meat mallet. And I'm just going to flatten this on both sides a little bit. And that's done to flatten it, but also to tenderize the meat just a little bit more. Now, for the breading process. We're going to do a standard breading, which is flour, egg, and panko breadcrumbs. And for this, I'm going to start with my wet hand. Wet hand puts it into the flour. My dry hand moves it in the flour, takes it out, puts it into the egg. My wet hand then takes it out of the egg and puts it into the panko. My dry hand then flips that around in the panko. Press the panko on a little bit, and now it's time to fry our tonkatsu. Put it into the basket, put it into the oil. The oil is about 162 Celsius, 325 Fahrenheit. Takes about 8 or 9 minutes. Once the tonkatsu is done, we're simply going to remove it from the deep fryer, let it drain for just a couple of moments. And again, one of the things about this oil is it seals that outside. It makes it so crunchy and so moist and delicious in the middle. So let's sort of cut it up and see how it is. So I'm going to take a sharp knife and just make some cuts right through it. You can hear the crunchiness of those breadcrumbs. Take this, slide it onto a serving tray. Oh, it's still beautiful inside, nice and moist. I'm going to serve it with some shredded cabbage and, of course, a little bit of tonkatsu sauce. And there it is. So we've seen our high oleic soybean oil, really the star of the show in items that are breaded, battered, floured, and even just French fries. Across the board, it is perfect and so delicious in the deep fryer. Let's take a look and see what it does in a saute pan. High oleic soybean oil has wide application beyond the deep fryer. For instance, it's a great oil for sauteing and stir frying because it holds up to the intense heat. So what are we going to make? Well, I started first by making some caramelized onions. And these caramelized onions, I basically slice the onions, put them into a pan along with some of the high oleic soybean oil, and let it cook very gently. And this is where really that neutral flavor of the oil comes through, because it allows those onions to just taste beautifully sweet and delicious. Now the dish that we're making is a little bit like the tonkatsu, but it's my version. So it's an Indiana pork tenderloin sandwich, and this is how we make it in Indiana. So we're going to begin with a pork tenderloin. I'm going to cut a piece about 200 grams. I'm going to put it inside of the plastic wrap, fold it over, and take the flat side of the mallet and flatten it. You want to flatten it to about 1/4 of an inch. Take it out of the plastic wrap, and then I'm going to season this with just a mixture of salt and pepper on both sides. And then I'm going to take some buttermilk. I'm going to pour the buttermilk into the egg mixture. It just gives it a little bit more of a tang. Now my pan is getting warm. I'm going to take the high oleic soybean oil and pour it into the pan. And you really have to put a whole bunch of oil into the pan. Now back to our tenderloin. We're going to do the old wet hand, dry hand. So wet hand into the flour, flip it in the flour with the dry hand, into the eggs with the wet hand, move it around. Put it into breadcrumbs. This time it's not panko breadcrumbs. These are just standard breadcrumbs. And once that's nicely done, all I have to do then is place it into that oil once the oil is really good and hot. The pork tenderloin is done as soon as both sides of it are good and crispy. I'm just going to let that sit for a second because now it's time for us to put the sandwich together, which is rather decadent. Okay, here we go. Just like we do in America, we have a bun, we have ketchup, and we have mustard. And then on top of that, I'm going to put that pork tenderloin. It should stick out from the sides of the bun a little bit. And then I'll put on lettuce, maybe, let's see, maybe a tomato slice, a few pickles. Love the pickles. Really, it's anything you want. And of course, let's not forget those caramelized onions that were cooked ever so gently and slowly in the high oleic soybean oil. And lastly, because I love it, a little bit of mayonnaise. I'm going to spread on the top of the bun, which actually makes me sort of think a little bit about all the things you can do with high oleic soybean oil in cold applications like mayonnaise and vinaigrettes. It works perfectly there just as well as the high heat application. So the lid goes on and that is ready to eat. High oleic soybean oil also has great potential in the bake shop because of its clean, neutral flavor and its ability to resist rancidity. And that, of course, is due to its higher oxidative stability. And that's so important because that's what gives us shelf life in our baked products. It's also important in things like the mayonnaise that we talked about before and other cold sauces. So where do we see it in the bake shop? Well, first of all, oil is used very commonly in muffins and other quick breads where the oil is incorporated into the wet ingredients, the egg and the milk, and then it's put into the dry ingredients and turned into beautiful muffins. But what I'm going to make for you today is a very special cake called a chiffon cake. And this is actually an offshoot of the angel food cake. It was invented in 1927 and it was kind of a secret. And the reason that it was so delicious and its secret was, well, lots of oil. And so the high oleic soybean oil in this recipe is going to be absolutely amazing. And this is how we make it. We start with some egg yolks. I'm going to put in some orange zest along with a bunch of orange juice. I'm going to whisk that all up to basically mix the yolks and the juice together. Pour in the high oleic soybean oil until that is all incorporated. This then gets poured into a mixture of dry ingredients. In this bowl, I have flour, sugar, baking soda, and just a little bit of salt. I'm going to combine this. It's going to make kind of a thick batter almost. I'm going to whisk that together. Again, this is a cake that comes together so quickly. Okay, and now the last thing is to whip the egg whites. I'm going to put a little cream of tartar in with the egg whites. I'm going to turn those on to high speed and we're going to whip them up until they're a nice firm foam. It only takes a couple of minutes to whip up those egg whites. You want to be sure that the egg whites are completely firm but not dried out. And then I'm going to simply put those egg whites into our mixture. And I want to fold the egg whites in without deflating them, but at the same time being sure that we have a nice homogeneous mixture. That's always the challenge whenever you're leavening with egg whites. Now that it's all mixed up, we have a very special pan that we use for this pastry, for this cake. And I'm just going to pour it all around the pan. One of the things that's essential to this cake is that you never grease the outside of the pan, because we want to be sure that it kind of almost sticks to the pan when it goes into the oven. That helps it rise. When it's all in here, we're going to bake this at 350 degrees, which is about 175 Celsius, for about 45 minutes or so. As our chiffon cake bakes in the oven, it's going to rise way up because of those egg whites. And interestingly, when it comes out, you actually cool it inverted. Now this cake is going to be light as a feather, but also very rich because of the high oleic soybean oil that we put into it. All you have to do right now is cut yourself a slice and enjoy it in all of its crowning glory. Look at all the food that we've made in just a very short period of time. High oleic soybean oil is a versatile oil. It can take the heat, it's clean tasting, resists rancidity, and is a healthy oil. It was such a pleasure being with you today.